He leaned on the screen, kissing the image of his daughter. But the next second, the screen went dark. Just as Sam felt at a loss, in the mediation room, a group of adults surrounded his daughter, constantly hinting and guiding her, saying, "Your dad is mentally challenged. Last night, he kidnapped you, and you should stay away from him as soon as possible." Faced with a barrage of accusations, Lucy was a bit flustered and confused. But to continue living with her dad, she quickly adjusted her emotions and firmly stated, "My dad loves me very much, and I really need his love. So I don't want to be separated from him." Although Lucy's answer was flawless, her biological age was only 7, and legally she didn't have the ability to think independently or distinguish right from wrong. So, the court, which always prioritizes reason over emotion, ultimately revoked Sam's custody due to his intellectual disability. This was undoubtedly a devastating blow to Sam. Recalling when his daughter was just born, his wife showed a face full of disdain. It turned out that as a wanderer, she deliberately seduced the then 7-year-old Sam, just to rely on having a child to gain support. Once her goal was achieved, she decisively abandoned the unfortunate father and daughter. Thus, Sam was forced to become a single dad. But with no experience, he had no idea how to take care of a child. He didn't know what size diapers to use, what brand of formula to choose, or even why the little one cried incessantly every night. And every time this happened, he could only pace around the room anxiously, until a kind neighbor, Grandma Annie, noticed his helplessness and embarrassment, reminding him to feed the baby every 2 hours. Although Sam had no concept of time and his life was financially strained, he never neglected the child, nor did he ever forget to feed even a single meal. Perhaps fatherly love is an innate ability, unrelated to material things, age, or nature. Since he was abandoned in an orphanage as a child, Sam never married, but he had a group of very close friends. Despite having certain defects themselves, they were all pure and kind-hearted people who treated Lucy as their own and cared for her deeply. Because raising a child is expensive and there was no one to help look after the child, Sam had to take Lucy to the coffee shop every day to work part-time and earn money. At first, she could handle the customers well and manage just like before. Calmly and methodically, she arranged everything neatly. But as Lucy grew up, becoming more mischievous and active, she found herself overwhelmed. Reluctantly, she had to swallow her pride and seek Annie's help again. Initially, Annie wanted to refuse, but just then, Lucy suddenly spoke, and she called Annie by name. In an instant, Annie's heart melted at the sound of the little one's voice, so she agreed to be the child's temporary babysitter. Under this communal care, Lucy quietly grew up and began to be curious about everything. Where does the sky end? Why do men go bald? How can the moon come home with me? Sam would patiently answer question after question until one day, Lucy suddenly asked, "When will Mom come back, and why are you different from others?" It turned out that Lucy, with her intelligence far beyond her years, had long noticed the unusual nature of her family. Although she wanted to know the answers, when she saw Sam feeling apologetic and helpless about these questions, she instead acted like an adult, holding his hand and gently comforting him, saying, "It's okay, you don't have to apologize. In fact, having you as my dad makes me feel very lucky. Because very few people can spend time with their kids in the park like you do." In no time, Lucy reached school age. To celebrate this new chapter in her life, Sam specially invited friends to join them in picking out new shoes at the mall. Since the good quality ones were expensive and the ones that lit up were also pricey, the sensible Lucy chose the cheapest pair. Even though they only cost $16, Sam still didn't have enough money at checkout. His friends generously pooled their limited pocket money, contributing $1 or $2 each to make up the amount. Perhaps moved by their friendship, the cashier not only didn't mind the trouble but also paid out of pocket to give each of them an orange balloon. Afterward, they strolled across the crosswalk with balloons in hand, just like the carefree Peanuts gang. Although Sam wasn't a smart father, he was definitely a loving one. Whenever needed, he would attend Lucy's extracurricular activities. If Lucy forgot her lines during a speech, he wouldn't criticize, scold, or feel embarrassed like other fathers might. Instead, he patiently offered support and encouragement from the audience. Growing up in love, Lucy reciprocated with understanding and affection towards Sam. Every night, Sam would tell her the same bedtime fairy tale, and even though she could recite it by heart, she would listen quietly and attentively. Because she didn't want to hurt Sam's feelings, nor did she want Sam to feel useless. Sometimes, when the teacher required it, Sam had to read some new material, but seeing her struggle with unfamiliar words, Lucy would switch to the story Sam was familiar with, claiming she didn't like the new one. You could say the father and daughter shared a mutual affection. However, that day, while dining alone, Sam was unfortunately targeted by a prostitute. Unaware of the situation, she was about to leave with the person when she was caught by the police lying in wait. Thus, Sam was taken to the police station. Although he wasn't legally punished due to his mental incapacity, when he called the school to explain why he couldn't pick up Lucy on time, it caught the attention of the Child Welfare Bureau. Since Sam's intellectual issues were evident, the welfare people contacted the school, and the school authorities arranged a special meeting with Sam. "Your daughter is a very smart child, but she fundamentally rejects learning. Previously, we didn't understand why, but now it seems she's afraid of surpassing you, afraid of making you feel inferior. Although neither the school nor the welfare bureau doubts your love for your daughter, if this continues, it could be very detrimental to her development. Even though he didn't understand what this meant, that night, Sam asked Lucy to read him an article. At first, Lucy pretended not to know many words, but with Sam's prompting, he no longer believed her. So, for the first time as a father, he sternly reprimanded her. At that moment, Lucy confessed with grievance, "If you can't read, I don't want to read either." This was the greatest protection a 6-year-old girl could think of for her father, whose mental age was only 7. But no matter how smart and strong he was still just a child, with a child's sensitivity and fragility. Therefore, when classmates asked if her dad was mentally challenged, she would readily admit it, but inside, she felt embarrassed. Seeing her dad, Sam, shouting in a public restaurant because he couldn't get the food he wanted, she wished she could find a place to hide. At the school's Halloween party, seeing Sam having more fun than the kids, she would quietly move to the side and pretend not to know him. Originally, these dark thoughts were something he wanted to bury deep inside. Unexpectedly, on his 7th birthday, Sam's mom prepared a surprise for him by inviting his classmates. One of the boys never liked the foolish Sam, so when Sam asked him to hide, he refused to cooperate. Seeing Lucy about to enter, Sam, in a panic, pushed him. This led to a dispute, perhaps out of spite. As Lucy pushed open the door, the boy suddenly shouted to Sam, "Lucy told me you're not really hers. You're adopted." The evil inside was suddenly exposed in public, and a humiliated Lucy ran out of the room. Sam wanted to chase after her, but was stopped by a social worker who was also at the birthday party. The chaotic scene made them believe Sam was unfit to raise a child and might endanger others. The judge handling the case decided to temporarily place Lucy in foster care. Until everything was clear, Sam could only visit twice a week, for no more than 2 hours each time. For Sam, who had the intelligence of a 7-year-old and was equally young and helpless, this was a devastating blow. No matter how he pleaded and cried, no one present was willing to speak up for him. With nowhere else to turn, Sam sought help from friends. Although they had no money or power, they knew they needed an excellent lawyer to win the case. So, after searching through the newspapers, they set their sights on the highly successful Rita. However, when Rita met Sam, she immediately noticed something was off and realized she couldn't afford the consultation fee. So, she quickly dismissed her. It's undeniable that Rita was very good, but the law firm wasn't a charity, and she wasn't a philanthropist. She wouldn't take on cases that didn't pay. But she clearly underestimated Sam's persistence and even more so, a father's love for his daughter. From then on, Sam went to see Rita every day, promising to work hard to pay her by the hour. Despite facing rejection time and again, she remained determined. Although this approach didn't sway Rita, it did spark discussions among her colleagues. Perhaps it was pride, or maybe she didn't want to be talked about. Rita unexpectedly offered to defend Sam for free in public, and Sam was able to get a lawyer. Because she was preparing a surprise cake, Lucy had to wait for an hour and 45 minutes. When she finally arrived, she slipped and dropped the cake. According to the rules, the father and daughter's conversation had to be completed under supervision and fully recorded and analyzed. Although Sam isn't very smart, after a few days apart, she immediately noticed the light was gone from Lucy's eyes. Once upon a time, those lively eyes quietly became clouded. Since she couldn't see her daughter all the time, Sam decided that as soon as she got her paycheck, she would buy a tape recorder so she could at least hear her daughter's voice anytime. Even though it's a considerable expense, she felt it was worth it. Besides, she had already promised the store manager that she would quickly learn to make coffee, which would increase her salary. Sam isn't a superhero, but for her daughter, she could become all-powerful. Seeing her father wholeheartedly devoted to her, Lucy felt ashamed and guilty for what she had said before. In fact, deep down, he just wanted Sam to be his father. To express this determination, he even specifically told the recording staff to make sure this sentence was written in the file. Although everyone present was moved by this genuine emotion, family affection could never shake the law. Therefore, all the father and daughter's hopes could only be pinned on the lawyer, Rita. However, proving that Sam has the ability to raise a child independently is not an easy task. Initially, Rita wanted to find a breakthrough from Sam's friends. Unexpectedly, all the friends gave irrelevant answers, and no useful information could be obtained. Suddenly, Sam thought of her neighbor Annie. She not only knew everything about him but was also a well-educated person who had attended college. Her testimony would certainly be convincing. But for some reason, Annie politely refused the request. As a result, on the day of the trial, no one testified for Sam. On the contrary, the other side called a psychologist who had evaluated Sam, and the doctor bluntly stated that Sam could not be considered a qualified father. Because he had personally told me that he would fall into a fear of making mistakes, often feeling helpless in front of his daughter, and sometimes even questioning whether he was a qualified father. After hearing this, Rita immediately refuted. As a father, being cautious in everything, what's wrong with that? Who can confidently say they are qualified? But the judge doesn't buy this argument. The opposing lawyer kept interrupting her train of thought, and even Sam, who didn't understand anything, told her to stop and not continue speaking. However, Rita, being a top-notch lawyer, even in such an isolated situation, quickly came up with a strategy and managed to defeat the opposing witness. As a mother, you often feel confused, don't you? You just don't want to admit it. Especially when you know your son overdosed. Can you say with a clear conscience that you have no self-doubt or guilt? Initially, the doctor tried to change the subject and didn't answer the question directly, but faced with Rita's relentless pressure and recalling his son's miserable state, his psychological defenses suddenly collapsed. Then, trembling, he shed tears. In the first round, Rita won completely, but she knew that this alone wasn't enough to secure victory. So, before the next court session, she invited a seasoned professional woman, a single mother with an IQ of only 70, yet she raised such an outstanding child. The real-life case in front of them was enough to prove that Sam also had this ability. In the second round, Rita had the upper hand again. However, at this moment, an unexpected event occurred. Fearing she might never see her dad again, Lucy, at the agreed meeting time, sneaked out with Sam while the staff wasn't paying attention. At first, Sam naively thought she had gotten the staff's permission. But after getting on the bus, Lucy suddenly said, "Let's not go back. This way, we can be together forever, go somewhere else, change our names, and start a new life." Although Sam felt this wasn't right, seeing Lucy snuggled in his arms, smiling happily, he couldn't bear to break this beautiful moment. So, the two of them embraced, walking from day to night. However, at 3 in the morning, when no one was around, they were caught and brought back. Rita, who rushed over upon hearing the news, was furious. Because Sam's actions could be considered child abduction, a very serious crime, this also meant that all their previous efforts might be in vain. Lucy, strong and healthy, immediately stepped forward to hug him, saying, "It was all my idea, it has nothing to do with my dad. So, don't blame her, and don't give up on us." Actually, though Rita was angry, she never thought of quitting this case. Because in this mother and daughter, she saw the most touching love. Lucy was interrogated alone. Since she couldn't tell the whole truth, while swearing with her right hand, she crossed her fingers on her left hand, indicating a confession to God. Even though Sam knew better than anyone the consequences of telling the truth, he still hoped Lucy would be honest while waiting outside. But Lucy didn't do as he wished. Moreover, when faced with everyone's questions, Lucy handled them with ease, mature beyond her 7 years, knowing they were asking if deep down she felt her dad couldn't meet her needs. For a child, having a father who is somewhat normal would certainly relieve a lot of mental and material pressure, at least not having to struggle so hard just to live with family. So, when faced with this question that struck her vulnerable heart, Lucy hesitated for a long time, not knowing how to answer. But in the end, she still felt that love was more important than anything. Everything is important. Soon, it was time for the next court session. Originally, Rita was worried about not having a suitable witness. Unexpectedly, Annie, who had been unwilling to appear, came trembling to the court. This undoubtedly increased the chances of winning. At first, Annie was indeed calm and unhurried, detailing many small differences in Sam's life compared to other fathers, and firmly believed and stated that Sam was a good father. If his custody rights were really taken away, Lucy would not only not get better but would spend the rest of her life desperately trying to fill the void in her heart. But the opposing lawyer was clearly prepared. He knew well that Annie's father was an abusive brute, leaving her with deep childhood scars, making her afraid to go out alone to this day. So, he deliberately exposed her wounds, causing her to break down and unable to continue speaking. Sure enough, when Annie heard her father mentioned, she immediately fell into pain and left the scene. And this was the reason she initially politely refused to attend. After several rounds of confrontation, next, they will conduct the final inquiry and assessment of the party involved, Sam. Since this trial directly affects the final verdict, to be on the safe side, Rita not only gave Sam intensive training the day before but also prepared a tailored suit for him, ensuring he looked sharp inside and out. However, on the day of the trial, Sam, who went to work at the store early, accidentally stained his suit and was nearly half an hour late, almost messing everything up from the start. Fortunately, he still remembered the emergency training content, and during questioning, he didn't make any major mistakes. Rita felt very relieved about this. But the opposing lawyer wouldn't let it go and even started making personal attacks. You can't even be on time, so how can you raise a 7-year-old child? Moreover, as the child grows older, she will become smarter and stronger than you. By then, what qualifications will you have to educate her? Faced with a series of questions, Sam desperately recalled every moment spent with Lucy. Although he didn't understand the standards of a good father, he had plenty of time to think about how to be a parent. He believed that as a father, you don't have to point fingers at your child every day or teach them anything. On the contrary, companionship, listening, patience, and love are more important. Although Sam struggled to organize his words, this answer was flawless. Even Rita found it incredible. However, the opposing lawyer knew well that love is both armor and a weakness. So, she changed her tone, speaking softly and gently. "I know you love your daughter very much, but isn't loving her about giving her more? Don't you think Lucy deserves a better life?" As expected, Sam, who had been firm, suddenly felt an overwhelming sense of guilt. Moreover, under the guidance of the opposing lawyer, He also admitted with self-reproach that he couldn't provide the life Lucy wanted. Initially, seeing the situation gradually turning against Sam, Rita tried hard to stop the opposing lawyers' questioning, striving to defend their rights. But the moment she saw Sam break down in tears, a story suddenly came to her mind. When both sides are desperately pulling at the same child, the one who truly loves the child will be the first to let go, because they can't bear to see the child get hurt, and thinking of this, Rita stopped fighting. Thus, Sam temporarily lost custody, and Lucy was forcibly sent to a strange family. Soon, the first visitation day arrived, but when Sam arrived at the foster home with flowers in hand, she saw Lucy surrounded by her foster mother and a sea of flowers, looking like her life was much better than before. Feeling inferior, she turned around and left immediately. Perhaps, at that moment, she thought Lucy no longer needed her. Little did she know, Lucy was staring in the direction she would appear, longing for her. For a long time after that, Sam never thought about visiting Lucy again. Instead, she locked herself in her room, folding paper boxes day and night, because that was what Lucy used to love doing the most. Rita, upon learning of the situation, kicked open Sam's door and found that she had built a wall of paper boxes like a child, isolating herself from the outside world and closing off her heart. Originally, Rita wanted to encourage her to be strong, saying they could always appeal again. But Sam suddenly lost control of her emotions, unable to bear the repeated blows and failures. Moreover, in her unrestrained speech, she accused Rita of being privileged and not understanding the hardships of life. Little did she know, the seemingly glamorous Rita also had a past she couldn't bear to look back on. Even though her husband had cheated, she had to pretend not to know. She was busy with work every day, barely having time to eat, just to give her son a good life. Yet her son still resented and blamed her. This left her tossing and turning every night, unable to enjoy her meals, and even needing to see a therapist for years. It wasn't until she met Sam and took on this case that she realized that companionship and love between parents and children are far more important than material things. You could say it was Sam who taught her how to be a good parent. It was Sam's kindness and purity that helped her piece together her broken life again. So, she also hoped Sam could pull herself together, find her courage again, and face her fate positively. After hearing this, Sam finally let go of her grudges and, after many days, went to visit Lucy again. Unexpectedly, the first thing Lucy did when she saw her was to cry and ask why she hadn't come for so long. Knowing she was in the wrong, Sam had written an apology letter before coming. "I know it's wrong of me not to visit you for so long, but more than saying sorry, I want to say I miss you, I love you. I also told you before that I like the song, Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds. So, from the first moment I saw you, I gave you this name. Now, you are still as beautiful and dazzling in my heart as this song." Even though it was just a few words, it instantly extinguished Lucy's complaints. The father and daughter finally reconciled. However, unfortunately, the foster family has already applied for formal adoption of Lucy, and the Child Welfare Agency fully supports it. For Sam, this was undoubtedly a bolt from the blue. He also understood that winning the case was almost impossible. So, she suggested transferring custody to the foster family, only applying for visitation rights. But Sam firmly refused to agree, and even quit her job to move near the foster family to see Lucy all the time. Although very dissatisfied with her actions, Yang Mu couldn't stop them and could only let the father and daughter create some accidental encounters. Yet, even so, Lucy still felt unsatisfied. So, every night after her foster parents fell asleep, she would climb out of the second-floor window and find Sam under the streetlights. At first, Sam thought it was dangerous and advised her not to come again. But every day, Lucy's small figure would still appear on the street in the early morning. And Sam would carry her back to the foster family after she fell asleep. This went on for a long time, and Yang Mu was moved by this persistence. So, one late night, he personally delivered the sleeping Lucy into Sam's arms. Originally, he thought Lucy needed a comfortable room and a pile of luxurious toys. But now, he realized that all Lucy ever wanted was her biological father's love and companionship. So, she decided not to fight for custody anymore. And Sam saw her love for Lucy, otherwise, she wouldn't have let go voluntarily. Thus, they proposed to co-parent Lucy in the future to fill the void of motherly love. In the days to come, it seemed all the good things came true. And Rita divorced her husband, and her relationship with her son became more harmonious. Lucy grew up happily and healthily under the care of her dad and foster mom. Although Sam's IQ is still that of a 7-year-old, no one would deny that she is a good father. I Am Sam, directed by Jesse Nelson, starring Sean Penn and Dakota Fanning, released in 2011, is a drama film. Although Sam isn't very intelligent and can't provide his daughter with a great material life, he can offer her the wholehearted love and companionship that many ordinary parents can't. Because of this, 7-year-old Lucy lives a very happy life. In contrast, Rita is smart and capable, a career elite and an industry leader. Her material life is extremely rich. She drives luxury cars and lives in a mansion. However, her 7-year-old son has become withdrawn and quiet due to a lack of parental love and companionship. This seemingly extreme contrast reveals a simple truth. Love cannot be measured by intelligence or traded for money, but is found in every moment of companionship. In this fast-paced and utilitarian world, are we still overlooking the original essence of love amidst the noise? On the path of pursuing success and ignorant enjoyment, has that pure and innocent emotion quietly been lost in the corners of time? How long has it been since we stopped to notice which star is shining the brightest? And how long since we cared where the gentle evening breeze is softly blowing? As time passes, these seemingly insignificant yet curious moments seem to be forgotten by us. In the trajectory of growth, how often have we tried to grasp something, only to let it slip away unintentionally? The longing and confusion about love have made many people forget its essence. Perhaps we should occasionally pause, let our hearts find a moment of peace, and truly feel those seemingly ordinary yet deeply sincere moments. It might be a simple companionship, a patient listening, or a loving hug. These acts of companionship, listening, patience, and love are the most precious and irreplaceable treasures in life. Alright, that's all for today's movie sharing. Please like, comment, and share. Looking forward to our next meeting.